Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It's me, Joe Pisapia, and today we're going to take a look at starting pitchers. That's right, the Ultimate Guide is back, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper with my good friend Nick Pollack from Pitcher List, and who better to talk about a deep list of pitchers than literally a guy who does nothing all day but make lists of pitchers. This is what he does, and as you can see, he's also in transition. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. We're trying to get to 25,000, by the way, by opening day. That's our goal. He is transitioning the bedroom office situation there, some living arrangements changing for some wonderful reasons. But Nick Pollack, it's like an episode of Property Brothers over there right now.
Oh my gosh. Let's just not talk about that. I sound good though. I got the mic and I got some random things to make sure just for you, Joe, that I sound as good as I can. Thank you so much for having me though. This is the fun of the year, where we spent all this time for 4 or 5 months just being like, this guy's right, this guy's right. And now we've got our flashcards. We've got our little bits of like, this is the thing that I care about with this guy or not. This is why we do it. This is great.
Now, our plan today is we're going to go through the tiers 31 through 50. Then we're going to do 51 through 70 and then 71 through 100. Then outside the top 100, we've each got some guys that we're going to outline. But really, we're going to pick Nick's brain about a lot of these names here in these tiers that you should be targeting in your fantasy drafts upcoming. And I'm very happy because some of the names that Nick put on his list are actually names on my list too. So I feel really good about it. It's nice when, you know, the guru agrees with you, and sometimes we don't agree. That's what makes the fun show. Sometimes we do agree, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy when we do.
Well, Joe, do you ever call yourself a guru? Is that
no, I don't like any of those guru experts, things like that. I'm a host and an analyst. That's what I am.
Guru always for me is always just like, I feel like I need to have like droopy clothing and like earrings and stuff like that. You
smell like patchouli. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah, it's incense going and stuff, which is nothing wrong with that. There's a time and place for that.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. Who knows? We got that new office going in. You could put a hookah in. You could do a lot of things going in there.
I could. You could. The options. But no, we're here to talk about all these pitchers. And I before I even begin, I want to be very, very clear. It is so difficult to do a ranking that works for everybody listening. You guys are in different leagues. You're in very shallow leagues. You're in AL onlys or draft and holds and 15 teamers. And when I do my rankings and when I talk about guys, I'm very specific to one format, which is your general standard 12 teamer, because that is what the majority of players play in. And I have a moment in my drafts that's around 55 or so where I shift heavily in what strategy you should be going for. So beginning in like 30 to 50 or so is going to be about, hey, I want guys who I find secure, who I think that their floor is going to be still productive and I'm never going to drop them. And then they have upside for more on top of being like an SP3 or so. It can hopefully be like an SP2, SP1. And then after that, it's all about hunting for as much upside I can decide on early in my draft. Because once not in my draft, early in the season, because you should be taking advantage of the waiver wire. This is the most plentiful waiver wire we've ever seen for starting pitchers. And instead of going for those boring guys that like, yeah, sure, the projections like it, that's fine for the entire year. To win a league, you don't want just value at that roster spot. You want to beat it. You want to turn that SP7 into an SP4 by the end of the year. And to do that, you have to take risks. You got to throw away projected innings and health concerns and just be like, who is going to give me good quality that I can figure out early in my draft? And that's around like 50, 60 or so of the starters off the board. So I just want to preface that.
No, it's a great preface.
Because I've come on this show before, Joe. And I've gone into these ranking battles with this and Alex Fast and stuff. And that's just been thrown out the window. So let's get it straight.
I mean, you could look at it in the sense of like you've defeated all oncomers and now it's just you here chatting with me. I mean, you can tell that to Fast at least. Before we get going here, a quick bit of business. Drop your comments below because we have another giveaway here at Fantasy Pros MLB. Somebody's going to win a signed Billy Wagner baseball. That's right. Ooh. Hall of Famer now, Billy Wagner, courtesy of our good friends at pristineauction.com. All you have to do to win, subscribe to Fantasy Pros MLB YouTube channel. That's pretty easy. And right now, drop a comment below on this or any video. That's it. That's all you got to do. And we'll be announcing the winner right here on the channel. So make sure you turn on those notifications so you never miss a live stream. You never miss a podcast. You never miss anything here at Fantasy Pros MLB. And you might just win a signed Billy Wagner baseball. Pretty good way to start off. All right. So here we go. Let's talk about the guys 31 through 50. Now, this range, Has some names on there that I feel like have a lot of potential this year. You got the Roki Sasaki's at 33. You've got Grayson Rodriguez at 35. Maybe he's ready to finally be the mantle. It seems like that's what the Orioles are counting on when you let Corbin Burnes leave. Hunter Brown, terrible April. Brilliant the rest of his starts, the rest of the year. You've also got some guys who kind of reclaimed their careers last year. Guys like Jack Flaherty who bounced back. And then you've got guys returning from injury like Shohei Ohtani is just the pitcher. Shane McClanahan's in this group. Sandy Alcantara's in this group. So a really interesting composition, 31 to 50 of names, all of which I feel like at one time, either last year or in recent memory, have been very productive. So I want to start with one of your targets here, and it's a guy that I am targeting in this group a great deal. He's coming in currently right now as a 37th pitcher off the consensus board of ADP at FantasyPros, Justin Steele. This is a guy who has pitched like an ace. Imanaga's getting all the attention still, and rightfully so. He was terrific last year. The Cubs are all in, I feel like. They smell blood in the water in this division. Steele, when he's been healthy, has been terrific. And it hasn't necessarily been arm injuries for Justin Steele. That's also something I think people forget in that equation. So why is Justin Steele a target for you in this range in 2025?
I think it's pretty clear to me. I have this little mini tier of pitchers actually right around SB20 that are your high volume pitchers who have a good floor to them with, I don't think they're going to hurt you in ratios that is ERA or whip, who also have a potential to go 25% strikeout rate or higher. And they aren't really known as your 30% strikeout guys. Some people are afraid that they might turn to a 20%, 21%. They're worried maybe a little bit about the ratios. But I see Justin Steele as one of the more underrated pitchers this year. And to put this in perspective, last year, opening day, pulled a hamstring trying to field a ball up the line and came back and needed some starts to really get back into his rhythm. And then at the end of the year, they shut him down entering September because he had some elbow inflammation, no tears, no nothing. It was so not a thing that he even started 2 weeks later. And the Cubs clearly should have just shut him down if there was any actual problem. So if you take all the time in between them, it's 4 months, May 27th to August 27th for Justin Steele, 2.45 ERA, 106 whip with a 26% strikeout rate. And this is over 17 starts, 103 innings. The best stat, though, is he has a 32% ICR in that time. And I know ICR, what is this stat? You know hard hit rate. You know barrel rate. ICR stands for ideal contact rate. It essentially takes all of those and says, hey, there's also these flares and burners. There's also these solid contact. Anything that's good for the hitter. And as a pitcher, you want that to be really low. What we normally see is like a 40% rate. And above that is just like, oh man, 32% is one of the best in the majors.
Wow.
So what Justin Steele does is he gets strikeouts. He gets volume. He doesn't allow hits. He has a 7% walk rate in that time. This guy's amazing. He does it with a fastball that changes shape as he wants to, stays straight upstairs, and then he uses cut action against righties inside. 2 different types of sliders, a harder one and the bigger one. He's really good at what he does. He's so stable and a fantastic floor. I want Justin Steele everywhere. It's easy.
Yeah, me too. I love him as like a combo when I'm starting my rotations out there as my number 2, and oftentimes I'm getting him there. Off the charts. Also a friend of the channel. He's been on our NFL show because he's a big fantasy football guy.
Oh, nice.
That's also a sport. Nick Pollack. I don't know if you're familiar with football.
I know. Unfortunately,
but he's a big fan of the football podcast, so we had him on for a mock draft. I'd love to get him on to talk about baseball. It's hard to get the baseball guys on to talk about baseball. They want to come on and talk about football. It's a crazy world we live in. Another guy that's on your list is Jared Jones, who last year when he started the season, pretty strong beginning. 3.56 ERA was his first 16 starts, 91 innings, 1.10 whip, good strikeout rate, 9.7 Ks per 9. Then in the second half, a 5.87 ERA over 6 starts, only 30 innings. Obviously, we know how the season ended for him. So what is it that you're seeing out of Jared Jones when you're looking year over year that makes you encouraged that he could return this investment? Because in all fairness, he is going in that same range as some other guys that have been, out there in the major leagues, let's say the Kevin Gausman types, right? Maybe a down year for Gausman, but a guy that's done it a few times now. So why Jared Jones instead of a guy like Gausman as a target?
Oh man, Gosman's your bust candidate. I mean, he hasn't.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just using him as an example.
Oh, I know. No, absolutely.
This guy's proven. Jones, very tempting.
Well, this is what makes it so fun for Jared Jones, is that he's going around someone like Kevin Gosman, who doesn't have that kind of ceiling, I think, that Jared Jones actually has at this point, because Gosman is still going to be a whip problem. ERA is still kind of in question. And we saw his splitter get worse last year. He did reclaim it by the end, but there are question marks with Kevin Gosman this way. While you see Jared Jones, and generally when he comes to these explosive rookie seasons from guys, we see in a sophomore year them add some of those elements that we're looking for from them. Yes, there are times that we see a great rookie year and it just never replicates. Usually that's because they don't have overall amazing stuff. They're already squeezed as much as they possibly could out of what they offer. That's not the case with Jared Jones. He's a four-seamer slider guy. Both of them get a lot of strikes. Both of them should earn a lot of whiffs. When we saw in the second half of last year, we had a lat strain from Jared Jones. It messed him up a bit. It delayed him. I think he got a little more fatigued by the end too. And he just didn't get into that groove by the end. It was really kind of tough to start him in September last year. But again, it was still really two pitch. And the biggest thing with Jared Jones is like, oh, hey man, you just got to add like something else that you can confidently throw for strikes in there against left-handers and against right-handers. Jared Jones is doing that. He tried to hide it. Hannah Mears had a fantastic interview with Jared Jones because she asked the right questions of, oh, I've got a secret pitch. She's like, oh, okay, you don't have to tell me the pitch, but is it going to be against right-handers or left-handers? And he said, oh yeah, it's going to be used against right-handers, maybe eventually left-handers, which is a sinker. We got you, Jared. And yeah, he threw 5 of them in his first spring start. That's perfect, because what Jared Jones needs is batters to think, oh, this isn't the four-seamer, this is actually the sinker. They need to have that extra layer of hesitation. It will also make them more efficient, because sinkers earlier in counts generally induce outs if you're able to locate it inside. Jared Jones, I do trust, would be able to do that at a decent rate. And then you still have, of course, this amazing whiff-heavy four-seamer and slider as well. He's working on the curveball and the changeup to go against lefties. I think Jared Jones is just going to be a better version of himself in 2025. And we all saw the ceiling of this.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're going to have a lot more stability with it. It's a second season with more stamina involved after 1 year of doing this. Jared Jones is ready to explode. And I think there's a lot of guys in this tier that are very boring and are like, okay, you're drafting them as an SP4 and you might get an SP4. And you don't want to leave your drafts with equal value. You know, if you leave your draft at $260 value after spending $260, you're going to go 6th place in your league. You got to actually try to win it. And Jared Jones is the kind of guy that can absolutely overperform his value. Well, you're never going to drop him. You're not going to drop Jared Jones this year. So I feel really comfortable going for Jared Jones as my SP3, SP4.
I remember last year on leading off, you know, he was on that run and Welsh and I kept asking, like, do we trade him? Like, do we sell high? It was so difficult. You know, and if he ended up selling high, you ended up doing really well because the second half obviously just didn't work out health-wise and obviously performance-wise. But it was difficult because he was so dominant early on. And, you know, sometimes that happens with the young pitchers too. And then, you know, they get a little bit more exposed in the league. That happens, but also they hit that innings ball. There's a lot of those variables in that discussion there. Also, you know, it's interesting too, because you look at, you know, the organization, they got the Bubba Chandlers coming through that organization too. And there's been, even in the offseason, there was some discussion of like, ooh, is Jones a guy we might dangle out there? If I was the Orioles, I'd be all over him. They have a glut of all these offensive prospects. The Pirates could use some more offense. They've got a lot of pitching coming through.
Oh, man.
To me, that's something that just makes a ton of sense. Orioles,
get on 20 teams that the Orioles should be calling to trade. And
how many guys can you play in the infield, Baltimore? I don't know. I'm gonna guys.
So let's go get Trevor Rogers. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm so sorry, Orioles fans. We actually put out an article about Mike Elias back in November about how the ownership is. We have a very trusted source for this. The ownership said, hey, I'm new. I have money. Please spend the money. Mike Elias is like, nah, I'm good. I want to be like the Rays instead.
No, that's crazy. I mean, it makes sense for the Pirates too. Like, you want to support Skeens. You want to support some of these guys that you're going to have in the front of this rotation for years to come. But
and I know how crazy this seems. I would not be saying this if the source wasn't rock steady. So
no, I know. It doesn't seem crazy at all.
You guys have seen how the Orioles did not spend.
They were a playoff team.
Charlie Morton. There it is, guys.
Yeah, Charlie Morton. When pitchers are the same age almost as me, it might be time to be looking for a different strategy. I'm just saying. Saying. No offense to Charlie. I got mad respect for the guy. But another guy in this tier, before we move on to the next one, that you have pinpointed is Sandy Alcantara, who is a guy that I have in my home keeper league. I picked up last year for $1 and just wanted to sit and wait. And I got him and McClanahan. I got him for $2 and Alcantara, because people just forgot. It's a keeper league, so people had just forgotten that they were floating around there. And I had them in the queue, and I was just waiting till nobody else had any cash. And then I was like, boom, 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 I'm going to take these two guys. And then, because I was in a rebuild in that league anyway, after being competitive for about 4 years. And it's interesting you chose Alcantara over McClanahan. McClanahan's more time to recover. I love both these guys. Alcantara, to me, was just such a workhorse, consistent, over 200 innings twice, something you never see, a Cy Young in 2022. So I'm curious, why Alcantara, and then why Alcantara over a guy like McClanahan, just in terms of like how you cherry pick them?
Sure. I'll actually start with the latter for a couple of reasons. One, Alcantara is cheaper. He's going 30 picks later, which is just nicer. That means I don't have to feel like I need to get Alcantara at the same time as McClanahan. Also, McClanahan's workload, I actually have less confidence in with the Rays being the Rays. And it's also different types of workload. So with Alcantara, what's so interesting is he's already throwing 99. I mean, he was in the bullpen in September that got us hyped, but like he just came out in spring training. He was like, yeah, I've got it. It's fine. We're all good. And Craig Mish came out with a report that there are no restrictions for Alcantara this year, which is unreal, but okay. For fantasy purposes, all right then.
Okay, now Mish is a friend of mine for many, many years. I mean, that's how I started this business, Craig and I doing shows together. So do you think that's also sending that flag out to everybody else? Like, hey, he's got no restrictions. He's available. Come get him because we're the Marlins.
And I actually even proposed they do a reverse Garrett Crochet, which is they
gotta pay extra
limit
for that
him
action sometimes
in the first half of the season, and then saying, great, trade deadline, he's all ready for you, but doesn't look like that. And I love this. It's also in 12 teamers, the mindset should be the roster spot, shouldn't necessarily be the player. And the reason for that is you have a guy like Alcantara, and you're saying, well, if they're going to keep throwing him 6-7 innings, eventually he's not going to be able to carry that workload and he'll get hurt again. That is different than Shane McClanahan's innings being overseen and stretched out over a full season at 150. Because what it sounds like to me is that if Alcantara goes, and let's say he goes 150 innings, it's not because the Marlins limited him, it's because he's not pitching anymore in August or September. That means you get that roster spot back to fill it with something else off of your waiver wire. So that is a huge value boost in my view. It's why actually I'm favoring Strider. It's why I'm favoring DeGrom more than what you'll see from a projection system. And maybe a little bit with Glasnow, because the Dodgers are going to be weird, I think, with Glasnow. But so these guys are going to go until they can't, and then you get to replace it. That's a roster spot open. And it should really be the replacement value projection plus their innings one, which is a fun concept that I'll talk about another time. I love Alcantara. I think he's incredible. He throws super hard, has a changeup and slider that misses bats. It's just great. The only downside here is that it's the Marlins. Wins are going to be a little bit tougher. If he's still going deep into games, you still should get a decent amount. It's not like such a harmful, 3 wins the entire year. And also, I don't know if I love Xavier Edwards at short. Hopefully he's not going to be there. I don't know. That's a hitter. But if he is there in that defense, that is going to be
a hitterless guy on to talk about that.
Yeah. It's not going to be a fun defense to pitch in front of, which might mean that his hit per 9 and his whip take a larger hit than it used to be for Alcantara. Still, again, a guy that you're not going to drop. And I think he's going to win you at times too. I love Alcantara. I think
what I love about Sandy too is that he doesn't have to strike out everybody. You look at the strikeout, he can. That's not his game. It's almost like a throwback to that Roy Halladay kind of style where it's where you look at the Halladay numbers, you go, he could strike out more guys, but he's trying to be efficient. He's trying to get into the later into the bullpen. He's trying to get W's and find the outs in lineups, which is the art of pitching, which is a little bit of a lost art, I feel like. And that's not the guy he was when he came up. I want to keep going because I know we only have a certain amount of time here to get all these guys in. Before we get to the next grouping, Draft Wizard, it's out there for you. The tools are out there, so don't be a tool. Use the tools. Use Draft Wizard to get expert rankings, perform quick mock drafts, and receive real-time advice during your draft to build a winning team. Practice your draft strategies in just minutes at any time with fast, realistic mock drafts powered by expert insights. You get live draft advice and player recommendations every time you get on the clock. So if you're ready to win, head to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard or download the MLB Draft Wizard app and start drafting smarter today. Next grouping here, Nick Pollack, 51 through 70. Now, some really interesting names here. We got some upside guys here, obviously, and some guys that are maybe just guys. The first guy that you've targeted here to talk about is Robbie Ray. Now, another guy returning from Tommy John, another guy that's got high strikeout potential. What is exciting to you about Robbie Ray now that we are further removed? And could this be the best version potentially we get of Robbie Ray?
Absolutely. Now we saw him healthy and ready to go. His velocity came back up with the Giants last year. I like the team context. I like that the Giants are going to let him go deep into games. Good team around him. Not necessarily the greatest offense, but a good defense in general, and he should get a fair number of wins. Strikeouts should be plentiful. He's always flirting with a 30% strikeout rate. And I love the fact that he's now learning Tarek Skubal's changeup. It's really been this element that he's missed in his game, where he has the fastball slider curve that destroy lefties, fine, but it can be a little volatile against right-handers because you really need to nail that slider down and inside underneath the nitro zone, which is essentially inside the strike zone, but down and in. And you have to go right underneath that, and then you get them. But a changeup is just the destroyer of right-handers these days. We see this all the time from Skubal, from Reagans, from even Tyler Anderson. How does he do a thing? Because of that changeup, right? Christopher Sanchez. There's so many lefties with these changeups that destroy. And you add that to Robbie Ray, if you can throw that 60% of the time for strikes, I mean, he's got it made. I think this is such an easy play of, you aren't going to get the ratios that should hurt you. He's been much better than his former self since that last year in Toronto and then moving over to the Mariners. And really, I'm not seeing anything from last year that suggests that Robbie Ray isn't that guy still. I love this, especially at 56. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I have him at 30 in my SP rankings. So all day am I getting Robbie Ray if he's going at 187 in my drafts. Oh, that's a steal.
I don't disagree. I know some people were trying to draft him last year, hoping they get something at the very end of the year, but this year seems like the time to be targeting him. And I'm a little surprised. I think if he has a couple big spring outings in the next couple weeks, I wouldn't be shocked if Robbie Ray starts ticking up and breaking that top 50. But right now, the 56th pitcher going off the board, I think I agree with you. Big value. Spencer Arrighetti of the Houston Astros, the next guy on the list to talk about. Now, last year he had an ERA above 4.5. All the deeper metrics tell you that probably should have been closer to 4, which is, again, not ideal, but this is a kid still. This is a young pitcher. Houston Astros are still going to be a competitive baseball team. When you start studying Arrighetti, what jumped out to you in terms of why you think he could be useful this season?
Oh, this is pretty easy. First and foremost, Arrighetti wasn't the guy that until midway through the year. Mm-hmm. He was obviously coming up and struggling, and it's just what these guys do. I call it the shag rug. It's a young man's floor, right? Where
is that what you got going on in the office right now? While
I know. Actually, I should, because it's actually really good.
You'd kill for that rug.
Sound removing echo. But no, it helps massively. Okay, everybody should do that for their audio. No, all I'm trying to get at is he had this run of 14 games last year. That was a 3.08 ERA, 118 WHIP, 29% strikeout rate. That was his final 79 frames, 76 frames, I should say. And now Arrighetti is in a phenomenal situation. He's on the Astros, which you want to be as a starting pitcher. You want to be a starter for the Astros. They let their guys go longer in games. They have a good defense behind them. They have a solid offense. It's a great situation. And when Arrighetti has 5 pitches, he has multiple whiff offerings, which is great. He's got this curveball he trusts a ton. He's got a slider in there. He's got a cutter for strikes. He's got sometimes his changeup that shows up. He's got a four seam that's very flat, which essentially means that it should get whiffs at the top of the zone effectively. He has all of the tools. And initially he struggled throwing strikes with them, and he got much better as the season went on. I hate saying this kind of stuff because this is like pseudo analysis, but I've read interviews with Arrighetti. I love the way that he thinks. He is a a very good cerebral pitcher in that he's aware of what he needs to be doing, making the small tweaks, really attentive to the details of it. And a lot of times we see guys that go, oh no, I just got to be me, whatever. This is what was made me successful. I need to be, he's dumb enough to be an all-star kind of thing, right? But Arrighetti actually had that conversation in the middle of the season, and then you see the impact that it had after that. So I love Arrighetti here, and we're also past pick 200. And what I was saying before at the beginning of this, we're at that point that you should already have 4 starters that you trust that you're not dropping. Not 5, honestly, considering how deep it goes this year. Arrighetti would then be your SP6 in a 12-teamer. That is the perfect guy to go for. If it's not there, if he doesn't have his command or really his control early in the season, you just drop him and you move on. It's not there, it won't work, and it's going to be a hipster, a headache-inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster if you hold on to him. Okay, you don't want hipsters on your team. So you'll be able to make a quick decision on Arrighetti, and then if it's good, you got yourself a stud. If it's not, you're at least putting yourself in a position they can go get the next big thing. Instead of other guys who are sitting on their hands on Brandon Pfaadt, saying, no, this is going to work out. This is going to work out. Now they miss, I don't know, this year's Flaherty or this year's Crochet, this year's Tanner Houck, all of those guys. You got to give yourself an opportunity to go get them. So Spencer Arrighetti is a huge target for me.
Throw the first big disagreement. It's not over the player. It's over you saying it's pseudo-analysis. I think the cerebral part is very important. I think the makeup of a guy has a lot to do with what I think of him as a player. Because eventually it's everybody at this level is super talented. It's the approach, it's the attention to detail, it's the work ethic, it's all those intangibles that make you great at this level. Talent makes you get to that level. It's the intangibles that get you past there.
I absolutely agree.
And to your point, Arrighetti,
I just want to say that every best shape of your life or a comment about good things means that they're going to be good is the only.
Oh, that's all. That's a bunch of crap. Yeah. But when you hear them talk about the things they have to work on or things they identify, it's a lot of the reasons why I'm in on some of the players this year who even had bad years last year or post-hype sleepers this year. It's some guys I think are just getting it. And like last year, I remember watching a lot of stuff about Ezequiel Tovar, right? Perfect example. And I was listening to him talk about the hitting and the things he wasn't doing right. And I was like, this kid really understands and clearly has got a lot of talent, plays in a good ballpark. If he can implement some of these things he's talking about, he's going to have a successful year. And he did. Arrighetti, by the way, you mentioned that better second half. First 17 games, 5.63 ERA. Second half, 3.18 ERA over his final 11 starts. So big difference there, big jump. One more guy, another one, big upside. Brandon Woodruff. Last time we saw Brandon Woodruff, this guy was a dominant frontline starter. What makes you think we could get that version of him in 2025?
I don't. I have no idea. But it's pick 217. And just like Arrighetti, it's all about quick decisions. So we'll know if Woodruff is good or not. And if he's good, well, he has struck gold. It's the only reason for us to suggest that he won't be is because, he's been hurt. And we're scared about this shoulder injury. We know the data. It's the low chance of this kind of surgery coming back and being the same. But I don't know. It's one dude. And he's apparently healthy, and they're trying to get him into the rotation to start the year. I'd say take a chance, see what happens, and if not, you move on. This is not the draft pick that you're holding on to for the entire year. Really, you have to embrace as much as possible to win your 12-teamers. This is what I do every single year. It's the tried and true method, especially for someone that focuses on starting pitchers every night. And you will find so much on the waiver wire, but you have to give yourself an opportunity to go for it. So instead of going for the middle, go for a high or low. And this could hit in a huge way. If it's not, don't worry. That gives you now an opportunity to go get something else that can be a much bigger improvement than your Toby, your boring, I don't know. Who's in this grouping that I don't like? Jose Barrios. You don't want to deal with that. That's just...
Well, I mean, you know what you're getting. You're getting starts, and you're getting probably 10 that are surprisingly good.
Starts.
Yeah, I think what you're getting is Barrios. You get 10 starts that are surprisingly good, 10 starts where you are just like whatever, and then 10 starts where you want to jump off a tall building.
Yeah, he's called the great undulator. He always finds a way to be between a 3.5 ERA and a 3.8 with like a 1.17 ERA. WHIP. Every year.
This is like ERA. It is, but he ends up there. But Woodruff is only 32 years old, so I'm with you. If you're going to take some dart throws to try to win a league, why not throw him on a guy like Woodruff? Next grouping here, 71 through 100. obviously a big mixed bag here. You got everybody from your Jackson Jobs to your Michael Wakas. You've got guys on new teams like Jeffrey Springs. You got guys like Sagano who've come over from Japan. So this is, again, a mixed bag. And I think this is also a range where I think targeting the right names here to build that rotation depth can be huge, because it can help you when you have injuries. It can help you even just get an advantage, because all of a sudden you hit on a pitcher here late in the draft where they can make a big impact in your fantasy season. So let's talk about Gavin Williams, because that's the first guy that you've earmarked here. What have you seen with him that makes you encouraged for his performance this season?
Oh man, so I want to reiterate one more time. If like pick 300, let's say that's your last pick of the draft. There are guys on this here that are going after that. So we're already hitting waiver wire pitchers at this point in this. This is 71 to 100. And by the way, I did a top 400 starting pitchers. It was like 75,000 words or something stupid. And I had so many guys up to 150, 160 that I could have theoretically put into my top 100. So if you were thinking about guys right now of the worry of, oh no, I won't have anyone to start if I get an injury, get that out of your head, because you will have so many guys to chase instead when that one injury happens. And a lot of these pitchers I'm seeing here, Mitch Keller, for example, kind of Merrill Kelly, Luis Severino, Eric Fede, Nick Martinez, Brian Bayo, all of these are not the ones that I would hang my hat on to be much more than an SP7 or something like that on my teams. And what I highly recommend is to chase the ones that could be a lot more than that. Gavin Williams absolutely is that. When he first came up as a rookie, he was just like one of the higher touted starting pitchers out there. Extension up the wazoo at 7 feet, throwing 96, 97 mile per hour, overwhelming four-seamers. And it's really just been the development of the other stuff that we've been waiting for. Unfortunately, he got massively delayed in 2024. It was an injury that lasted far longer than we expected into the season. And when he did arrive, he didn't get into the groove that we thought he would. Now, he just threw 97 miles per hour yesterday. Great. He's also gotten a lot more vertical break on his four-seamer. Awesome. He's now going with cutter, slider, curve, and change. And that slider is looking like a much better number 2 pitch than the cutter we saw last year and the curveball that we saw as well. Both were very low strike rates. We've seen near 10% strike rates from Gavin Williams in the past, but it's not because the fastball has been bad. Fastball has actually been getting all these strike rates. It's really been the secondaries that haven't been able to support it. So now you have the slider that actually gets you strikes, and you're in Cleveland, who's just going to let him start every single game. I know it's vote now, but you still imagine Terry Francona getting another popsicle and forgetting that their guy is still there in the 8th inning. Like, that is what I think of when I think of the Guardians. And Gavin Williams is going to go every 5 days. He's going to go as long as he can in this game. He's going to rack up strikeouts. He is a strikeout pitcher. And I think that it's going to come with ratios that you like. This is such a good mold for a pitcher. Take the chance on this, and you'll know early. If you can't throw strikes, then fine. You move on. This is the whole thing here. Early decisions, high upside, you move on, you'll be okay. Gavin Williams, go get him.
Now, one guy in this range who has finished as a top 25 starter not that long ago, just 2 years, Jesus Luzardo, now the Philadelphia Phillies. So big difference there. You're going from one of the worst teams in the National League to one of the best teams in the National League, a spot where he is now their 5th starter, in that rotation. The bullpen, I think, a little bit improved too when you got Romano at the back end. That's been their Achilles heel. This Phillies team is locking down those saves on a more regular basis. And this is a player that I recall not that long ago, you and Alex Fast having an all-out bloodbath fight about. And now
he's right.
You did well, yeah. And now he's basically free, and I think that's what becomes so intriguing. He's become a target of mine because in my mind, I always follow, certain organizations who make runs at players, right? When Tampa's on a guy, I want to be in on him, right? Because they see something that they can fix. The Mets are starting to become that organization of words I never thought I would say out loud. What they're starting to do with some of these guys too. Yeah. I think, I'm encouraged by the concept of Clay Holmes maybe being like the next Derek Lowe kind of project. If you recall, like a guy who was extreme ground ball pitcher coming out of the bullpen, we make him a starter and he has really good success, but maybe like a higher strikeout version. You saw what they did with Severino. You saw what they did with Sean Manaea. Now it's also when teams are acquiring guys that we take for granted that Luzardo's just not that old. He's just been around forever because he was a prospect and we all got prospect fatigue with him. And then he had arm injuries and he's pitched on some bad teams in, Oakland and some bad teams with the Marlins. But now it feels like nothing but upside. So I'm in on this and I'm glad to see you are too. Let's talk about why you are.
Yeah, so first of all, you guys know that Joe's a Mets fan, clear from the way you just described.
Well, it's self-loathing Mets fan. You have to put that caveat.
No,
although last year, I gotta say, it was
Clay Holmes.
Last year,
I actually didn't see Clay Holmes on here. I would say that Clay Holmes is a target of mine too. I am impressed by that changeup that he had.
Well, he qualifies at RP. That's why. So technically, he doesn't make a lot of
that understood. I think he's going around the same spot though. Him actually, man, I had a term for it. It's fine. I called Clay Holmes the Adobe, by the way, because he's Clay Holmes. And then, of course, there's Grant Holmes, who's a real estate broker because he grants home.
Get out of the show.
This is, yeah, exactly.
This is the low point.
You get a picture of
We've
guys.
hit it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Luzardo. The interesting thing here for me is twofold. One, obviously the context is great. You have the Phillies now. You have good win potential. The guy goes longer into games. I don't care about his health because I'm not getting him in the first 150 or so. I don't need him to be an SP3 the entire year to be a foundation and a rock of my team. I'm trying to see hey, are you going to help me now? And you'll be able to tell pretty early on, is he the same volatile self? Is he throwing those sliders well over the plate and they're getting crushed? Is he actually locating the four-seamer well? Because my gosh, he does not. Well, it's a very hittable one. However, there are tweaks to be made. And I think the Phillies can actually identify them and implement them. First, four-seamer misses or it has extra horizontal run than expected. That is, it kind of acts like a two-seamer than a four-seamer. So right now he's trying to do called strikes away to lefties. No. They hit that. Throw that inside like a sinker, and that should actually work really, really well. Throw that arm side, and he should have a lot of success against lefties. That will make it so that the mistakes he's made with his slider to lefties, not nearly as much of a problem, and he could probably get away with that a little bit more. I like that a lot. Now against righties, the changeup is actually really good. It's a lot better than the slider. And he still throws these sliders in these 2 strike counts, has made a ton of mistakes with them. And there's your problem. Just throw more changeups to righties and fewer sliders. And suddenly you have the volatility, a lot of those home runs kind of go away a little bit. The whip isn't so bad. The ERA can be a 3.6 and I'll be fine because he's a 25 to 30% strikeout guy. And he's going to get wins because he's on the Phillies. Wait, this is really good. And I'm not spending that high draft pick on it. Also, if it's just terrible, he didn't make these tweaks, fine, I'll just drop him. It's a 266. This is amazing.
I agree.
Oh my gosh, I want Luzardo all day here.
Last guy here in this group before we get to the guys outside of the top 100 that we're targeting. Drew Rasmussen. I want you to fill in the blanks of this sentence. In 2025, Drew Rasmussen becomes what?
I have no idea. Because it's all about how much volume he gets. And this is a really easy one. If Drew Rasmussen starts, you want him everywhere. He suppresses hard contact, he still throws hard, and he gets whiffs. It's really good. Even if it's 5 and dive, I don't care. That's like elite 5 and dive. So you're just going to do that. Probably won't be. So I think the Rays need guys who can throw. And I'm not even worried about them going to George Steinbrenner Field for Rasmussen because I think he just allows too much weak contact that doesn't matter. Thing is he starting? Is he actually going more than 3 innings when he does start? I don't know. Zach Littell doesn't have any options left. And that might change things. So I'm not sure if Rasmussen actually has a rotation spot. And that's why he's here of yes or no. Quick decision, you're gone. Okay? Cool. Simple, easy. Just get Drew Rasmussen, see what happens. If it's great, you got gold.
All right. Let's see what happens with the guys outside the top 100. Nick's got his targets. I've got mine. First one for me at 112, DJ Hertz. I think that everyone's heard me talk about the Nationals being a sneaky team this year. I think the Athletics and the Nationals are going to be just pesky and frustrating and maybe better than people realize. I don't know how many wins the Nats will get at the end of the day, but I think they're going to be far more competitive. And I want the lefty with the big strikeout potential. Another guy, too, that I think gets it. I've had some good conversations with DJ, and he is very focused about this season. He's already shown you some flashes at that minor league level, too, and I think it's all wheels up. David Festa, another guy I think is really interesting. Another one who might not start in the rotation here for the Minnesota Twins, but in deeper leagues, I want this guy on my bench. Last year, again, first couple starts, a little rocky. After that, things went really well. He's got good strikeout potential there. He's got the right frame, all the things you're looking for in a young starting pitcher. And I do think eventually he will win out over time. So even if he's not named to that opening rotation, Festa is one that if you're in these 15-team leagues and you're trying to build some depth, guys like Hurts, guys like Festa are interesting. And the last one on my list here is Quinn Mathews. Now, every year in January, I start to do my minor league work because coming off the NFL season, I'm doing all my work on the NFL draft guys and doing all my work on the baseball guys, but I don't get to see a lot of minor league baseball. So I start to dig deep and I start to watch all of the tape and the highlights of these guys. And of all the pitchers I watched, Quinn Mathews just stood out like a sore thumb in the best possible way. Jumped off the screen to me in every which way. The Cardinals are desperate for help in that rotation. That rotation was like trying to go to like the old age home last year. It was crazy. I was like, what are they doing there? And nobody here, I felt like, was south of 35 in that rotation at one point. And Quinn Mathews, I think, is the beginning of that. Now, how many innings he has this year, all that stuff we could talk about. But when you're looking at acquiring some good young arms who might be able to at some point pop and maybe save you some free agent budget, Quinn Mathews could be one of those guys. Now, before we get to your list, I, of course, make the show sheet up. So I made my list first. And you were talking about seeing Quinn Mathews in spring training. How much, I don't know how much you've watched Quinn Mathews before that, but what were your thoughts about him? Because you seem kind of positive, just like I am.
Well, okay, so I do a full review of the minor league system for every team before spring training hits, right? And it's part of my top 400. I'm like, all right, who are the major prospects? And I just got to know who they are because they're going to show up and I got to be ready for those guys. And Quinn Mathews was a name I heard a lot. And I remember digging into him, not really loving it because his four-seamer did not really have anything exceptional attached to it. It was decently flat, but it was like 94. It was not the best IVB that is vert upstairs. And I was just kind of getting wind that like, all right, this seems like a good pitcher, but not really someone that can excel. And like we didn't really love his changeup necessarily. It was like, okay, I get it, but like I don't know. Then I saw him and he added 2 extra inches of vert on the fastball. Now it's like elite. And then he was spotting everything well and the changeup was working off of it. And just watching him pitch was much more of a, from what I saw before, could just be the day, but was very much of a guy in control. And this is something that everybody can do. You subconsciously know who are the pitchers that you expect to do well, who are the ones that are throwing and guys just aren't, knocking for base hits and where the strike zone feels large as opposed to small. And Quinn Mathews certainly made it feel like a large strike zone.
6'5" lefty who went through from A-ball all the way to AAA last year, and AAA stalled out a little bit, but I think he was just kind of, done by that. What I watched were some of the AA starts. And again, I was just like, look, this kid, there's no way he doesn't get an opportunity in St. Louis this year, in my opinion. But I want to know about your guys outside the top 100. You have a fascinating list. Let's run through them here. First one is Dustin May. So why is that a target of yours when you get late into drafts?
Yeah, you're not going to see DJ Hers from me. But
that's fine.
That's because I just don't believe in the changeup being consistent enough for him. I am excited to see it get better, though. If it does, I love your pick because the fastball is good enough.
He's working.
It maybe overperformed, but the changeup just needs to really be more solid for him. But Dustin May, what a scenario. Oh my gosh. Dustin May has no more options. He's going to be pitching as a number 5 for the Dodgers. I mean, I would be absolutely shocked if the Dodgers said, Tony Gonsolin, the guy who throws like 92 now and sometimes has a splitter and slider. Or maybe the guy who throws 97 to 99 with his sinker has not gotten the real opportunity to pitch throughout a season yet because he got Tommy John and then had an esophagus surgery that was kind of terrifying when you hear about it. That has made it so that he's had even more rest and he's ready to go. You want to pitch for the Dodgers. You're going to get wins, especially when they're in this 5-man, which really is kind of a 6-man in April because of all the off days. So it's like once a week in April. But Dustin May is primed to just go nuts and actually get into the rhythm that he was supposed to get in before in his career. Oh man, I want Dustin May on every single one of my teams. And one other guy that I know I didn't mention here very quickly, Max Meyer was like 3 ticks harder yesterday and has like an elite fastball now. And I'm just going, what? You just were a slider only guy. And now you have a 92 mile per hour slider, not an 88 mile per hour slider. And you're throwing 96, 97 instead of 94 with an ideal flat attack angle you didn't have. I don't know.
I'm glad you brought him up.
I didn't put it on the list. Just be aware, guys.
No, but you know what? I'm glad you brought him up because that's a player that I've been in on several times in the last couple of years waiting. And last year was incredibly frustrating, right? Because you have a scenario where he comes up and he looks good, and then they are jerking him around. They're sending him down to the minor leagues. And I keep thinking about, we want to save his innings. Save his innings for what? All that playoff baseball the Marlins are going to be playing, all those important September games coming up on the Marlins schedule is just such a crock. Like, I don't understand. I guess, I don't know what it was, what was going on there, but once upon a time, 3 years ago, Max Meyer was one of the, I know Welsh, myself, even the aforementioned Craig Mish was telling me, he's like, look, keep an eye out for this Max Meyer kid. That's going to be the kid. And I hope that finally they just leave him alone and leave him in this rotation, because once upon a time, he had a special trajectory, and it feels like it got completely derailed in the last 2 years between injuries and the organization just making bad decisions.
Yeah, he actually went back to his old college arm angle. His arm angle was
interesting,
a lot higher when we've seen him in the majors, but then he went down to it for this one, it looks like, and it's just so much better. Look, it was 1 inning, everyone. So I can't really say that he's going to be 96, 97 now, because 1 inning max effort spring, I don't know. But this was a much better version of Max Meyer than I've ever seen. I've been the guy out on him because, he just has a slider and that's it. I'm paying attention to this, so you should too. But Dustin May is the guy that you should be drafting easily.
Right, 2 more guys on your list. One coming back from Tommy John, Lucas Giolito, and the other one, Grant Holmes, and you can't make that bad joke again. So break down these 2 guys for me before we get out of here today. Grant Holmes and Lucas Giolito. Why should people be drafting them in 2025?
Sure. So for Giolito, it actually wasn't Tommy John. It was an internal brace. I know it's very similar, but it does mean that it's faster. And it does mean that there is, I believe, a tendon that is still attached a little. So in short, it's a little better to have internal brace, a little bit. And Lucas Giolito is in such a good situation. I know that the 2021, 2022, the kind of what you've seen recently, Giolito has not been good, but there have been a lot of factors for what that has been. And actually, in a lot of those seasons, he was fine until he wasn't. But now he's in a great scenario in Boston, where we actually saw him looking much better this time last year before he was hurt. And I actually think that the Red Sox are going to squeeze the best version of Giolito than we've seen since 2019, really. With fastballs up and changeups underneath that, a better slider. I really like this scenario for him. I think also mentally going to the Red Sox from the White Sox, I think it's a little bit different here. And then also being bounced around to teams that I don't really trust the development with, like the Angels. And honestly, the Guardians is a major league crew I don't like as much as their minor league crew, which I think is really good for pitching development. So I'm a huge fan of this. And you'll know early if Lucas Giolito is better or not. And then you might get a good volume guy that you really want that isn't harmful or boring. And then with Grant Holmes, find the deed maker, whatever you want. He's someone with 2 whiff pitches, slider and curve that he commands really well, and a 4-seamer that hits the edges. And speaking of good scenarios, it's Atlanta. He's not the number 5. He's the number 4. And last year, they limited him a bit because it was a big jump going from reliever to starter. They didn't want to overwork him. Fine. But now they need him to. This is a rotation that has Strider already on the IL, but then you have Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez, who are definitely health risks. Spencer Schwellenbach, there is some concern about the massive workload of 167 innings last year between the minors and majors. I don't have that as much as others, but I get it. Long story short is that Grant Holmes should be in this rotation as long as he's healthy. And I see a strikeout guy who has good command. That is like the old Cleveland Guardians style. So I'm a huge fan of that in this scenario at pick, I don't know, 350 or something ridiculous.
Well, but to your earlier point,
take a chance.
And you made a comment earlier about, well, you have guys that you just want to churn and burn sometimes at the beginning of the season. He would fit that bill for me, right? If he's got that rotation spot, he's going to be there in April and May because we know Spencer Strider is not going to be. So at the very least, maybe you get 2 good months out of him, and either you flip him or you're just on to the next pitcher, or maybe somebody from your bench emerges, or from the waiver wire, as you said. So
or maybe he's just good.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just good. You're just good, Nick Pollack. Everybody should go to Pitcher List and check out the incredible work. I mean, I don't want to like blow sunshine here, but there's nobody that does what you do as good as you do it. The Pitcher List website is incredible. I've been on there reading stuff for the last couple weeks, getting myself ready for the season. And I'm the guy that writes the pitchers up for the Black Book. And yet here I am reading Nick Pollack stuff, always after the fact. That way I don't get influenced by Nick. But it always is encouraging when I see some of the guys that you're in on, I'm in on. That to me makes me feel, like I said, confident for the season and of course, always check out Nick and all his work, because every year they do PitchCon, which is an incredible fundraiser for ALS. So if you're unfamiliar with Nick's work, follow him on social media. Be a part of PitchCon next year. If you weren't, they raised over $10,000 again for ALS research. I hope that the renovation in your house goes well, and we start to look like you are not some sort of captive. Like, the only thing worse is those years that Justin Mason was like in the shed. Like, this is just an uptick from that.
He's still in the shed.
Yeah, but the early shed, the early Justin Mason shed was like, look, it was like a murder room. It was terrifying.
I've got things, guys. I've got like a Volpe. It's
all there. It's all there. It's just in boxes right now.
It's really just scattered around, and it's terrible right now. Joe, thank you so much for bringing me on for this. It's great to see you. And Joe was a part of PitchCon last year. You did a great job.
Yeah, every year I show up, I go to work, and I let Nick have an hour off. And I want to hear from everybody out there in the YouTube comments, because remember, if you comment, you can win a Billy Wagner baseball. Here's your assignment: your favorite sleeper pitcher in 2025. And while we're at it, let's get to 25,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on for Nick Pollack. I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.